I stood there in Andrew's arms, my body tense, unsure of what to say next. His embrace felt familiar, warm in a way that both comforted and tortured me. There was a tenderness in his touch that made me want to believe things could go back to the way they were before everything with Adam. But deep down, I knew things had changed, maybe forever. "I'm sorry," I whispered, trying to steady my breath. "I didn't mean to worry you. I just needed some time." Andrew pulled back slightly, his hand still resting on my shoulders, but his eyes never left mine. His expression softened, though the concern in his gaze didn't fade. "I wasn't just worried, Laura. I didn't know where you were. Why didn't you answer your phone?" The guilt I'd been carrying for days hit me like a wave. I had kept so much from him, and now the weight of the truth felt unbearable. I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't pretend. "I was with Adam," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Andrew's face froze, his hands falling away from me as if I had burned him. His eyes widened, searching my face for any sign of the words he wanted to hear. "What?" he asked, his voice strained, barely above a breath. "You went to him? After everything?" I nodded, the words catching in my throat. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go. I needed space, and I needed to be with him. I love him, Andrew. I love Adam." The room fell silent. The air between us thickened with the weight of what I had just said. Andrew took a step back, his jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might turn and walk out, but he didn't. Instead, he simply stared at me as though trying to process everything in a moment too short to understand. "So, that's it then?" he asked, his voice shaking with barely contained emotion. "You're choosing him over me?" I wanted to say something to reassure him, to tell him that it wasn't that simple, but it was. I had already made my choice, even if it hurt both of us. "I never meant for any of this to happen," I said, my voice breaking. "But the truth is, Andrew, I've been lying to you and to myself. I can't pretend anymore. I'm in love with him." Andrew's face hardened, and I saw the familiar hurt, the same pain I had seen the night he first told me he loved me, the night I had known things were changing. "How long?" he asked, his eyes dark with betrayal. "Since before everything," I admitted. "Since before we even met, I think. It's always been him, in a way, and I can't keep ignoring it. I'm sorry." Andrew's eyes searched mine for any sign that I might change my mind, but there was nothing there. The truth hung between us, sharp and final. After a long pause, he nodded, his face pale. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this," he said, his voice steady but full of pain. "But I guess you have to do what you have to do." I nodded, feeling tears welling up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "I'm sorry," I whispered again. "I really am." Andrew turned and walked toward the door without another word. I watched him leave, the weight of everything crashing down on me. The apartment felt suddenly empty, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. A few days later, I packed my things. I couldn't stay in the apartment anymore, not with the memories of Andrew, and certainly not with the weight of my betrayal pressing down on me. I moved into a small apartment downtown, a place of my own where I could start over. I wanted to be alone. I needed to be alone for a while. But time had a way of moving forward, and soon enough, I found myself starting fresh. I focused on my work, made new friends, and rebuilt my life. Adam and I spoke occasionally, but I wasn't ready to jump back into anything. Not yet. I needed to find myself again before anything else. Months passed, and I finally felt ready to move on. Adam and I reconnected slowly, this time on my terms. And then, one afternoon, while walking through the park, I met someone else. His name was Daniel, and he was everything I'd been looking for: patient, understanding, and kind. We took things slowly at first, but it wasn't long before I realized that I loved him. I had finally found peace, or so I thought. A year later, Daniel and I were married in a small ceremony by the beach. It was simple, but perfect. I had built a new life, one that was free from the chaos I had once lived in, free from the turmoil of Adam and the confusion of the past, But life, as it often does, had a way of throwing unexpected twists my way. A few months after the wedding, Daniel and I took a trip to another city. We were walking through the downtown area, enjoying the sights and sounds of the new place, when I saw him, Adam. He was walking in the opposite direction, his gaze catching mine as he passed by. My heart skipped a beat, the world suddenly feeling smaller, tighter, as if everything had come to a standstill. For a moment, neither of us moved. I could see the recognition in his eyes, the same intense look I had seen 1,000 times before. He stopped in his tracks, and so did I. The air between us thickened, and I felt a rush of memories flood back. Memories of the time we had shared, the connection we had, and the love I had once felt for him. But now, standing there with Daniel beside me, the man I had chosen to build my life with, I realized that I had moved on. That part of my life was behind me, even though the pull between Adam and me would always be there. Daniel, sensing the tension, looked between Adam and me with a subtle, questioning glance. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't. There were no words left between Adam and me. Our story had ended, and all that was left was the past. Adam stood there for a moment longer, his eyes locked with mine, before he nodded ever so slightly, the quiet understanding between us unmistakable. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I stood there watching him leave, a strange mix of relief and sadness washing over me. And when I turned to look at Daniel, he smiled at me, a silent reassurance that no matter where I had been, I was right where I needed to be now. And with that, I knew that the story of Adam was over, and my new life had truly begun.